podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Some of the topics are addiction, fear, faith, self-compassion, relationships, codependency, emotional intelligence, and more. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. My conversation today is with Aydan Dunnigan-Vickruck about tango dance, sexuality, and spirituality. Aydan writes about tango dance as an excellent practice for relational dynamics. The idea is to relate what we express and experience on the dance floor to our life relationships. In fact, dancing tango can be translated into how we live, move, and relate both on and off the dance floor. Aydan Dunnigan-Vickruck is an author, blogger, and mental health social worker. He's a former Lutheran minister with a master's degree in theology. Aydan has been tango dancing for 15 years, and he's the author of the book Trauma to Tango, Dancing Through the Shadows of Sexual Abuse. He is a weekly blogger who explores the connection between mental and relational health, relational dynamics, and dancing tango. Here is the interview with Aydan Dunnigan-Vickruck. In your own words, who is Aydan Dunnigan-Vickruck?
It's a big question, I suppose. 65 years old, live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Social worker, currently married. I've inherited half a dozen kids and 18 grandkids now, current count. And added 2 kids of my own, so we're quite an extended family, and we all live here in the same city, so that's really quite fabulous. And keeps us very busy, keeps us engaged, keeps us doing all sorts of things we might not do, I suppose, if we weren't as connected as we are. But that's my fun. And then I also dance, and I write about dancing, and I think about dancing, and I make it a spiritual practice. That's my focus, is to try to understand it from kind of a deep human relational standpoint, as well as connecting to spirit, connecting to God, and divine elements, I suppose. So there we go. That's a brief thing. We love the outdoors. We canoe, we hike, we cycle.
It sounds great. Really great. Thank you. What is your personal experience with trauma, and how has dance changed your life?
My personal experience, it's been a long journey, Valerie, and it started coming real to me midlife, basically. Up until then, I had been coping with trauma, but never realizing that was in fact what I was doing. I had a lot of defense mechanisms that protected me from my past and my own sense of how to protect myself from from repeating or revisiting such situations. But I really had no insight into why I was making those choices that I was. They were actually very self-limiting choices. I resisted being physically present. I resisted being in passion and resisted pleasure. I immersed myself in the life of the church. I was a pastor. I took on a lot of really rigorous, quote unquote, spiritual disciplines, all in a way to protect me from my own self and protect me from my past. And what surfaced, though, midlife was some triggers or some revisiting of traumatic incidents. Some were actual memories of being sexually abused as a child, but mostly they were physical reactions where I would just in the middle of the day, even maybe something would hit me in my gut, and if I was fortunate enough to be home, I could just curl up in the bed, and I would probably lay there and rock myself for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, and until I could get out of bed, rouse myself, and then for the next day or two, I would still be pretty paralyzed, immobilized almost. So those kept happening. Not maybe once or twice a month, and so I started into therapy seriously. I started also to journal and to write as a way of exploring getting underneath what had happened and what was going on with me in the present. And so over a course of about, I would say 15 years maybe, I unearthed a whole lot of what was in my body, what was in my past, what was in my memory, and processed it. And I feel 98% free of it at this point, and the rest of it is kind of good learning that I hold on to. Was that what your whole question you asked? Did you ask dance on the end of that too as well?
Before you answered that second question, I asked as one, how long did you protect yourself from yourself?
I'll have to give a convoluted answer because the odd thing is, I think generally the choices we make to protect ourselves are really misguided because maybe we don't understand really what the situation is. That was certainly my experience. So I was afraid of life in a lot of ways, and so made choices that protected me from being alive, from being fully engaged, from, if I want to get really specific, not wanting to have a healthy sexual relationship, for example, because I was afraid of sex from my childhood experience, of course, from the examples that I had seen and from what I had lived. So I married, but I married not in love. I married to protect myself from being in love. A lot of those kind of really life denying choices. Going to church was again a protection that I needed at the time because I just couldn't make any sense of what it meant to be a vibrant human being. So I thought, well, I'll cloister myself. I will commit myself to praying. I will commit myself to ascetic lifestyle, denying the flesh, pleasures of the flesh, that sort of thing. So that's the way I lived to the best of my ability for a long time, until eventually the life urge and surge and energy surfaced anyway, and I caught up with me. Let's put it that way. And then I eventually had to deal with, real life, real blood flowing through the veins, that sort of thing.
Right. What kind of therapy have you done?
Well, most of it talk therapy, in the kind of traditional sense. Then there was some body-based therapy that followed along Stephen Levine and Bessel van der Kolk and those types of teachers, trauma related therapy, and then a huge one was entering into love relationships, which was with my children. Of course, that wasn't physically intimate in that way, but then meeting my life partner after that, and just experiencing what it meant to be in an actively engaged in a loving relationship with passion and pleasure, and so that was huge. And then the final piece was tango.
Which leads me to that question, the original question.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So how do tango have to do? So I came, first of all, dance is not part of my background. Part of that's cultural. Part of it was, again, religion based, which from my tradition preached against the pleasures of the flesh. So if it felt good, it must be bad. and getting close to a woman's body could only lead to bad things because it felt good and it was going to end up sexual and such. So, and not only that, just the kind of primal connection with being in your body and feeling how that moves and interacts, that was really suspect itself. So, I mean, a really limited, if not demented view of life. But nonetheless, that's what I was clinging to at the time. So when Patricia and I, in our anniversary, were attracted to the representation of tango that we'd seen, and we thought, well, that would be fun for our relationship. So we started dancing. Now, of course, the tango being a close body dance, it just raised so many red flags, pushed so many buttons for me. Being pressed up against a woman's body was horrifying in a lot of ways. But it helped me. It helped to bring to the surface that scripting and that those negative impressions that were left with me from childhood, and redo them, rework them, rescript them, understand them in an entirely different way, so that at this point in time, I can experience that close physical contact as being very healing, very nurturing, very invigorating, just plain feels good. And it doesn't mean bad things. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go home with my dance partner, unless it's my wife, of course, or take advantage of a situation, or even just plain interpreted it sexually. It means that I can just experience pleasure as pleasure, contact and touch for what it is intended to be, and that's deeply nourishing. So what I've experienced over the last several years is rewriting my own script of who I understand myself to be as a man, as somebody with integrity, with personal presence, and not the models that I grew up with, which were perverted, basically. I mean, models of taking advantage of situations, being close to a woman meant groping, grabbing, fantasizing, or some other distorted perspective.
You said something very interesting to me when I asked you about therapy, and you mentioned the connection with your wife. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think real, genuine relationships, they have the power to change us. The other thing about what you just said, that you didn't know how to create that separation or the boundary between touching and having fantasies, acting in a perverted way. This is very difficult for most people, I would say, especially men. What would you say to men out there that still have this problem?
Yeah. So first of all, I thank you for asking these questions. Secondly, as I answer them, I'm not pulling any punches. So I mean, I'm getting I'm talking in a way that would embarrass me if I was talking like this in a social context, for example. So I mean, I'm giving you the real, yeah. Um, but this isn't true for all men, but it was certainly true in my background, and it's certainly true for a large percentage of our population, and it's certainly popularized in our, in the media and public. I My perspective is that most men do not know how to be physically intimate without it involving sex or being a power struggle, taking advantage of a situation, objectifying the person we're with, and having all our emotions processed through our groin, basically. That's my experience was that anytime I had an emotion or a feeling that was soft, sensitive, delicate, intimate, I would immediately redirect it to my groin, figure out how I was going to uh, act out sexually, because that became my strategy for getting rid of these uncomfortable feelings, because I didn't know what to do with them. And they made me afraid, certainly, for a couple of reasons. One is, uh, when I was married, I didn't want to be screwing around on my wife. That was a choice that I was making. But secondly, I didn't want to reenact the patterns of abuse that I had witnessed in my childhood. Not just to me, and not even, frankly, primarily to me, but to my my female friend at the time. And I was just really afraid of repeating those same abusive practices. So maybe I'd go into sexual fantasies on my own, for example, or I'd avoid those situations altogether. It was a very, very uncomfortable. And I have spent the last, 10 years particularly, but maybe perhaps much longer than that, a very concerted focus on how to learn how to be present in those close, physical, intimate, sensitive, sensual situations, and not sexualizing them. And it's damn tough work. I work at it constantly, and dance, tango is certainly part of that. And I will say that in the last few years, maybe even more recently than that, I've really felt that I've gotten over and past all that past scripting to the point where I'm really able to receive nurturing from that sort of contact and engagement without having to put a negative slant on it, or objectifying or fantasizing attachment to it. I mean, that's in the past, and I can be very present in those situations. It's very freeing. It's very nurturing, very enlightening, and as I said, I'm 65, first of all, so I've lived most of my life, but I've also spent a hell of a lot of work on it, and with the hope that it's not only my work, but it can be a bit of an example or a model for other men as well.
I believe that compassion, the practice of compassion and connecting, relating to the world and other people at that level, it helps a lot. It's hard to translate physical touch into sex when you have that kind of attitude in life. Even thinking about other human beings, I think about suffering, that we are all suffering here at some level. Is there something wrong in interpreting touch from another human being as sexual?
Well, no. I mean, it's wonderful, isn't it? It all depends on the intent. So if it's only wrong, and it's not even wrong so much. I mean, it's only wrong if we take advantage of the situation and act out on somebody. Then of course it becomes abusive.
Yeah.
But otherwise, what I want when I'm in contact with somebody is, I want to really be able to understand what it means. to be connected. So, I mean, it's totally natural for me to, if I'm around an attractive woman, to certainly put a sensual garment on that. But I mean, I could sexualize it too as well. But it takes me out of the specific meaning of that encounter.
Right,
It
Nathan.
just it
Yeah.
distracts me, and this is what I find. See, the common phrase has been that the penultimate is the enemy of the ultimate. In other words, we get almost there and we get distracted by something, and that's the real mischievous deceit about sex. Is I will so. I mean, you're a young, attractive, vibrant woman. If I were close to you and we were talking, or I don't know, we were dancing, or we were doing something, holding hands, or embracing, or whatever. I mean, I could easily be distracted to think, okay, I want to go to bed with you, and and if we both wanted to do that, that would be fine, of course. But I know from my own life situation and history that that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is the real person to person, heart to heart. And if you take it sexually, then that energy is dispersed, dispelled, it goes away, and I lose that moment. I lose that contact. And what I found, what I'm really looking for 98% of the time, except when I'm basically with my wife, is I'm wanting that raw, open, heart to heart that doesn't get distracted by going into my groin and getting an erect, thinking on that level. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that it takes me out of that deeper, richer connection. And that's been my experience. So in dancing, for example, for many years, I came home thinking, because I've come home with good feelings. I'm thinking, my God, I must be, it must all be about sexual attraction. And it wasn't that was a bad feeling. It's just that, wait a minute, it's not all about sexually, because I'm not attracted to 24 people sexually attracted over the course of an evening. I mean, that's just ridiculous, especially since most of these people are not sexually attractive. I mean, you're all shapes and sizes, all ages, all whatever. So what else is going on? And that was really the question. I wanted to know where was that nurturing coming from? And what I figured out was that there's just this deep soul nurturing that comes from being physically close in a way in which there's no agenda. I don't have any needs that I have to act out in this situation. We can just be gentle and present with each other. And the specific gift of tango is that because of the way it's danced, you have to be so acutely attentive to your partner and where their body is, their posture, where they're moving, so many different elements, and they have to you as well. So I would come home often, feeling guilty, like thinking, "Holy shit, I really feel good about that night, and I must have done something bad." I must be having there's something. What's going on? It didn't seem to be. When finally I got over the issue of, whoa, a woman's rubbing her breast against my chest, and thinking that was like a huge, big deal. Got beyond that, I realized it's the experience of being listened and attended to on a sensual, intimate level that just nurtured and invigorated me, and that's what I think happens I think it happens more instinctually for women, because they have a broader range of what to do with feelings and emotions. I mean, everything doesn't have to end up in bed. I mean, some of it might, it doesn't all have to go there. But my socializing as a man was, anything good ended up in bed. That was how you dealt with things. And so I found a new way to, and it's just far more enriching because I get to hang on to these feelings. They stay with me. They lead into the next day or the next dance or the next person I encounter, and I don't have to, be over and done with it in the bed or in the bathroom or whatever. I'm however I'm going to process it.
Wow. That is wonderful, what you're saying. Truly, truly wonderful. It seems like social dance has a lot to teach to humanity about genuine connection. That's what I hear from you.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So I found, when I was on the dance floor, any of my socializing patterns that I had relating to the opposite sex would surface. So it wasn't just about sexualizing or sexual behavior. It was about who's going to lead, and all couples have that drama. I've been in other groups and where we focused on dance groups focused on the relational dynamic, and couples will show up and there'll be this argument about who's leading. And of course, the man needs to initiate most things in tango. And then there'll be the argument, and he will be timid, or he will be, or the woman will be saying, his partner will be saying, well, you don't know what you're doing, or I'm used to leading. Why can't, just, or anyway, there'll be this argument, right? What I brought to the dance floor, being an enlightened 90s man or 60s man or whatever, was everything had to be consensual or agreed upon, or I could never exert my influence on the situation without it being potentially offensive to my partner. So I had a super weak lead, and we couldn't dance, basically, is because I wouldn't take my responsibility. And I had to first realize that if we were going to dance, I had to step up and exert myself physically and take the steps and show the lead and be strong. And my partner was going to have to accept that and fall into that. So, for some people, for a lot of men, it would be the exact opposite. And I still run up against this regularly in our dance group, where the men are domineering or overpowering. And I even bump against some teachers that I've heard it said in our community, if your partner isn't following your lead, you goddamn well make her.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I suppose they don't have the curse words in, but that's, so you move to this model. It's so totally unique, where you come from my side, which is, oh, I don't know, should we do an ocho now, or maybe there's something else you want to do, maybe you want to turn this way, which of course is totally dysfunctional, to the other extreme, which is, I want you to move here, and if you're not moving there, I'm going to literally force you. I'm going to strong arm you to the position that I want you in, and until you get it, until you're where I want you to be. And the whole dance is valued by whether or not you've done exactly as I've wanted you to. So those are two extremes, and then you find something in the middle where I've got an idea. I'm going to make this suggestion. I'm going to create this possibility. I'll give you some space. These are the parameters. You can't overstep the bounds, but you can do what you like in the middle. And then it becomes this co-creative, responding, playing off each other, which is such an amazing thing of beauty. So rather than me not giving my partner any structure at all, or expecting her to do exactly what I want her to do, but saying, okay, now we're going to create this configuration, but within that, there's all these possibilities. And then she gets to play, and then I get to admire her creative beauty and the expression that she's bringing to this partnership. And it thrills my heart to see that. I mean, it's like we're making a painting together. And, I pick the colors and I hand her the paintbrush and I say, we're going to work with this palette. And then she'll play with some of the colors a little bit. And then I'll maybe choose a different color and then she'll play with some more. So it's that sort of creative interaction that goes on with, as again, to be able to get to that place where you can have that open, free interaction is it's a long journey.
Right. Yeah. It takes work and time. So dance,
Yeah.
social dance, and relationships, real life relationships. You suggest that the men should lead and the women play around the space created by the men.
Yeah. Now that's, I think, specifically the structure of tango. So it's not necessarily other dances. And in fact, my limited experience in dancing prior to that would be, kind of the woman takes charge and the guy hangs on and tries to keep up or whatever. I mean, that's just in my, because we never learned as guys to dance. That was a woman's thing, right? So it's kind of the flip for tango specifically. But the more you dance tango, it's initially presented as the man leads and the woman follows, or there's leads and follows. It doesn't have to be male and female. It can be, can be anything. But the more you dance, the less you experience it as a lead and follow. And the more you experience it as a cooperative or commingling energy. So, but I am aware, though, nonetheless, that my specific responsibility is to create structure, particularly at certain times. But that's so one of the dynamics, for example, is the lead. Well, I'll call it a man in this case because I like to make the relational parallels. Or me as a man can at times have my weight between 2 feet solidly locked in position, and chest as well. Maybe my chest moves a bit, but my arms are locked as well. And in that, when I give that solid, firm structure, then my partner has a lot of freedom. She can play around that because she's got something to hold on to, basically. And she could do a lot of decoration and fancy things. And on the other hand, my partner, or the woman, or the follow, however you want to put it, is never permitted to lock her feet, both feet, share her weight equally on both feet at one time, because that it locks the dance in place. And then you're stuck, basically. So, I mean, a rule for my partner is, I don't really care what foot you have your weight on, as long as it's only on one foot, because then I can shift the structure in such a way so that it works. But if your weight is equally distributed on both feet, we're stuck, and the dance is over until something changes. So, but that's tango, right? I mean, that's that would be a different experience for, if you're doing salsa or rumba or whatever else.
That's interesting. With tango, then the man creates the structure. The man is the one leading the creative movements. Okay. And not just the creative movements, but the foundation, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the foundation. Now, there's I don't want to make cultural generalizations so much, but I mean, the sense of male machismo in Buenos Aires is, of course, very different than it is in the frozen north of Canada.
True.
So it means different things, right? But I don't know where I was going with that. From somebody who just came back from Buenos Aires. I mean, I've been there lots myself, but I'm always as a man, of course. A female partner who just came back said, the men down there have a very clear idea of how they want you to dance, and you better be right on the money and do exactly what they want. Otherwise, they ditch you.
Wow.
And I thought, well, geez, that's 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 really limiting, isn't it? Because my big thrill with the dance is to be surprised. I set something up, and what are you going to do with this? And then she does a spin or a kick, or she comes back with a caress or a special foot, and I'm like, wow, thank you. What a surprise. But now I've set it up, but then she gets to take it one step further and do something else, some more embellishments with it. Um, yeah, that's what I find fun.
So let's talk spirituality. What is your definition of spirituality?
A lot. I mean, I could give some classic ones, like, let's say, being lost or caught up in something bigger than yourself, or getting a sense of the whole, or giving yourself over to love or something. But I'm going to try and make it something really specific and personal, because I mean, you can read those anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, first of all, it's body based. So I have to learn a way that I can, whatever connection I'm making with anything beyond myself has to engage me on a body level. So, for example, I spent years in a seminary behind a desk reading books, studying, thinking, writing essays and such and whatever. And that, in terms of the way I think right now, has nothing to do with spirituality. It's a mind game. It gets us detached from where the action is, and the action's in my body. Sex is deeply spiritual, because it's connecting me with another person on an intimate, vulnerable, intensely pleasurable arena or engagement. I think that's another place I've gone with my spirituality from my previous church model. My church model taught me, or the focus at least, was how to deal with suffering and pain, but didn't have a clue about what to do with pleasure. In fact, basically demonized pleasure. And so the growth out of that has been to learn how to really indulge myself in the nurturing, pleasurable, satisfying experiences in life, which dance is one. But I mean, um, loving my wife, petting my dog, walking out in the sunshine, drinking a nice glass of wine, all of that. And so, again, that's a bit about mindfulness, being in the present, but it's delighting in the present. That might be my definition: is spirituality is how to delight in the present, how to immerse yourself, engage yourself fully in the present moment, and enjoy it to its max.
Yes, yeah. I like that, Aydan. Being present and enjoying the good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. Do you believe in God?
Absolutely. As much as I am able. In saying that, I mean that belief is very difficult. So, for me to believe in God is to say yes to life, yes to the world, to not give in to despair, to hold on to hope, to say that this is all wrapped up in love, despite what we see around us, and despite how I'm maybe tempted to get cynical, or to despair, or to hate. I say, wait a minute, I believe in God, I believe in purpose, in meaning in all things. I believe that this is moving forward towards the light. Now, I say that as faith talk. I mean, what I wrestle with on a gut level on a daily basis is, we're all going to hell in a handbasket, and what can anybody do about it? I mean, there's that tension, right? So when I say I believe in God, I mean, the best I can. It's tough to believe in God. People often say that, oh yeah, that's just an escape. You're just, trying to pretend that there isn't bad stuff out there, or I'm not sure what they're saying, but it's tough to believe in the positive, to believe in love, and to live it, to act it out. So, really, people say, "Are you a Christian?" And I say, "Well, I'd like to think of myself as a Christian, but I don't come anywhere close to the model that Jesus represented. So, what does it mean for me to say I'm a Christian? I don't know.
Right.
If I am a Christian, I'm a poor one, or half-hearted or something. I don't know. I work at it, but I'm only a little ways down the
Right.
road.
I like that, what you said about bringing God to earth into our daily lives and just acting out love. So that leads to my next question. What is your definition of love?
Well, as I'm working on it these days, it means to be present with somebody without agenda, interested. Things that I see that I admire about my wife, for example, is her real deep interest in people. And my tendency, as soon as something comes up for discussion, is I want to give an answer, a definitive answer, and resolve whatever it is. And her tendency is to ask somebody about, oh, what does that question mean? Just like we're doing now. What does that question mean to you? Or what's that definition mean to you? And
I need her to co-host this podcast.
She's great at that. She's more interested in what somebody else thinks about it than saying what she thinks about it. And I just think, well, that's fascinating. I really need to learn that. And but it's that, in terms of love, it's just being there with another person in that, and not making it an opportunity for me to express my will or my brilliance or my own the situation. I don't have to own the situation. I can just be there with the other person. So that would be one. That'd be a relational. I could talk about it in terms of what I do as a social worker or whatever, but that's the area that I'm interested in is how to just be in somebody else's presence with my whole being and accepting whatever they're bringing to that encounter as well.
I really like that. Do you connect gratitude to love as well?
Yeah, I would, but I'm going to change for me. I'm just going to add something to that then, a little bit. And to love is to move. So it's just the word object. That's all. For me, to love is to be subject to subject. And the big, we were talking about the issues about sexuality and earlier on. It objectifies. Too often, we're objectifying the other person in the sense that, what can I get out of this, or what do they mean for me, or how are they going to make me feel good? And subject to subject, you're just there. You've got no agenda, and it's I don't know. Anyways, I just the word object, I play with that lots, because I just find that that's my tendency. It's so easy to want to see things, to objectify things, and see them in light of how are they going to make my life better or complement it. And love is beyond that. Love is just being present without. I'm thankful for that encounter, but I might not be even thankful at the moment. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of bit in awe or something. Maybe there's an awe. I would see awe as being more immediate to me than gratitude. And that might be, if I take it back to dance again, that's the first thing that hits me is when I'm on the dance floor and something unexpected happens, or my partner shares in some way that's kind of enriching, and I'm just, my mouth drops, and I'm just this, oh. And then when I leave the dance floor, then I'm thankful and I thank them and I think, oh, wow, that was fabulous. But my first experience was just this almost being caught off guard. I mean, it's just this wonder. Really, it's a sense of wonder, you know.
Right. I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I interpret that as a form of appreciation and gratitude. You just don't have those
Yeah.
words and you don't think them.
Yeah.
So I want to
Right.
ask you the question about self-love. What is self-love to you?
You know, I've come a long way with that. I mean, there was a time when I would think that would be even maybe wrong, you know, like unhealthy, unreligious, whatever. But I'm really thrilled at the choices that I'm making for myself, the healthy choices that come out of a space of conviction, and it's or even intuition, even just kind of really soft, subtle listening and following that. So it was kind of what you were saying before we started the interview, when you were saying, your approach to fitness, you know, and meeting up with people or not meeting up with people or not starting groups, even though maybe some part of you might say, you should be, but another part of you is saying it just doesn't feel right now. So just honoring those little voices, respecting, giving time and space for myself. So it's an active thing. Let's put it that way. It's making choices and acting on those choices. So a real concrete one was, and a big one, was when I decided to keep dancing, even though it wasn't working for my wife anymore because physical limitations, and that put a whole lot of stress on our relationship, and it challenged me. It challenged my script of saying I need to be there for my wife at all times, doing a good thing, and if I'm doing something that's causing conflict, then I must be bad. I mean, it would sound stupid for somebody outside listening to it, maybe, but that was a script that I had to work through, and to the point where I would say, no, this nurtures me, and it's important to me, and I have to make that choice, even though it's difficult and it costs something, for myself. So that was self-love, and that's an example. So it's probably easier for me to talk about in terms of kind of concrete choices rather than some kind of philosophical statement or something.
Right. I understand that you are connecting self-love to self-knowledge. Is that right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, very
yeah,
much.
yeah, yes, yeah. This is a good way to put it.
What is the difference between intuition and wisdom?
Well, I think wisdom would be knowing enough to follow your intuition.
Right, following what you know for sure, right? Yes. Right.
Because, I mean, you don't know, right? And there's such small voices. So a big thing of wisdom is learning how to hear those voices, and then knowing, of course, which ones you should maybe are helpful and which aren't. But typically, they're to follow them is the right path.
So, how do we know the difference between that voice, that's the authentic voice of the self, and the voice of ego or the false self?
Yeah, well, that would be the wisdom, right? that's the wisdom.
Right. But I would love to know from you, like, how do we know for sure which voice is the one to follow, the one to take actions upon?
Well, I haven't. I'm not sure I've thought about this, but I'm gonna say experience. But uh, what's coming up for me right now, Valerie, is I know what my choices have cost in the past, what they've cost me, and what they've cost people around me. Yeah, and so you know what? If something comes up, I just go back and I say, okay, what did it cost the last time I made this choice, or the last time I didn't make that choice, the last time I didn't follow what I needed to do for myself, or the time when I thought, what the hell, who cares, what difference does it make, and made that choice, and then it really did hurt people that I care about, and so I mean I want to invest the most love and caring in my life and in the people around me that I'm capable of. So that's the measure about a decision, even if it's uncomfortable at the time. If I'm convinced that it's going to bring more love into my life, I will I'll follow that.
Okay. So you're using experience, which is the definition of wisdom, really. Having the
Yeah,
experience to know what's the right thing to do.
yeah, and I'll add just a little bit to that too as well, which
Yeah.
it's I'm not even uh, it's this has been that I don't even have a clear picture or answer or way to say this, but I've often found myself in situations where I might have made a decision that because I was caught up in the moment or whatever that would have cost me or hurt me or hurt people I love in a way I would not have wanted to have happen. And another presence has worked through me or become active in that situation and may basically taken over the controls and guided me through and took me someplace and took me to a better place. Let's put it that way. I don't, and
Right.
you know, we're going back actually
Yeah.
in this particular thing, we're going back to sex, but I just think the times when, again, not that there's nothing wrong with sex, but if I'm in a committed relationship, that's a monogamous relationship that doesn't allow for that, and if I am sleeping around, it's going to really hurt somebody that I don't want to hurt. Well, it's just really a better thing that I don't go there. And yet, you know, how can I always trust myself in those circumstances? I've have found that another part of me, I'm going to say a higher self or a higher consciousness, or if I want to use Christian terms, I could say the Holy Spirit or something, but I'm not sure that fits so well. Anyway, nonetheless, takes over. And I've heard myself saying things and making choices that I thought, whoa, I didn't know I had that sort of insight or that sort of wisdom or that sort of self-control or whatever you want to call it, you know. But yeah, that's an amazing piece for me. So wisdom isn't always of our own. We don't necessarily own it. It comes from afar as well, and it's there at the time we need it. I'll add that.
Yeah. I call it inner power, like inner resources. Those moments where we have those insights of doing the right thing,
Mm.
although there's something in us that's trying to make us do the, quotes and quotes, wrong thing. I don't know if I believe in right and wrong. I mean, I believe in morals and doing things like you said about
Yeah.
knowing that certain choices will lead to disaster and self-destruction, but and other choices will lead to the unknown. I like that better than wrong
Mm-hmm.
choices. So sometimes it's inevitable that we just do what we have to do. Maybe there's something in us that needs to learn and needs that kind of experience.
Now that's absolutely true. Yeah, and I have I've redone my life several times in fairly dramatic fashion, and
Rebirth.
you know, yeah, learned great lessons. But the I want to get to something that you had written about in your book. So there were a couple of examples that I kind of really keyed into, and one of them was when you looked in the mirror one morning and you saw an ancient self or something, or the question surfaced, who am I that I chose this body? Or it was something like that. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, when I was really young, I had the impression that I had been here before and I was in a different body, in a female
Yeah.
body this time.
Yeah.
That was the moment. Maybe there was another moment in the book where I looked at myself in the mirror too and saw, but that was later on about going through the conflict about living that life, physical life, and
Yeah.
wishing for, spiritual life.
Yeah. So well, that certainly the first one rings a bell. So, and then there were a couple of them and all that is to say is that there is this deep well of wisdom that is way beyond us, way beyond our current incarnation, that carries us and guides us, and mostly goes unnoticed, but sometimes comes to the surface when we really need some specific direction or input. And back to right and wrong choices and that sort of thing. I mean, and making a mess of your life, which, as I said, I've.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Uh,
boy.
but that has had a deep wisdom in it as well. I mean, there has
Right.
been a
Yeah.
real. When I look back, I mean, I spent years guilting myself and shaming myself about some of the stuff, and now when I've 20 years later, able to look back and say, wow, there was some really deep wisdom and I don't know what else to say about it. Life affirming choice that was made in the midst of all that chaos and disruption. And it's taken me all this time, but I'm getting to the point where I'm able to really commend myself for being that person that created a whole lot of shit for a whole lot of people, and in the long run turned out to be a blessing. That's a tough one,
Yes,
but
I believe that. Yeah, it's hard to accept, right? But that's how life is. I really believe that. I think a lot of people are not ready yet to address their traumas in a clinical way, psychotherapy, or I don't know, even dance. They need experience, hardcore experience, to learn those
Mhm.
lessons. You just mentioned now reincarnation. Do you believe in life after death?
I'll say yes, and that's like saying, "Do you believe in God?" I mean, what did I just say? I mean,
Well,
really, but yeah, I don't know. What would you say?
would you say it's a belief or just you know what you really don't know?
Uh, I haven't had any specific explicit experiences of another life. So, I mean, maybe, for example, you looked in the mirror and you had that sense of you were here before. And I don't know that there's anything that really speaks to me of that. Although what I'm quite sure of is that I have my soul's path and direction was certainly set for me when I came into this world. So and the perspective and wisdom that I bring to it comes from elsewhere, and I actually link a whole lot of it up to Jesus um, and some of this, yeah, and so there's that piece, and I've heard other people have said things about me and my past and whatnot. I mean, and I've had readings and it's been good information. It's been helpful information. I've received it. And so, yeah, I really believe that the life of the spirit is ongoing, and whatever is in me that is worthwhile came from before and will continue after. I don't know. That's probably all I can say.
Yes, mind continuation. Right. If you were to translate the word well being into another word, what would that be?
Well, first of all, of course, that's something you've done a lot of work on, and I've really admired the probing and that you've done with that, and so and I think the one of the key pieces there is the commitment you've made to that search. So I mean that's terrific. How would I define well-being? I mean, I've got to say, being in loving relationships, and if it's not maybe a relationship to a person, it's maybe just to the bigger, wilder, wider world. I don't know, but I mean, love has to be. I can't see. I wouldn't want to be anywhere without deep love, and the deep love is what keeps me committed to my path.
Yeah. Yes. 1,000 times to that.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of people do you help, and how do you help them, Aydan?
Well, I'm a social worker. I work in the inner city, and my clients are mental health clients that are living on government assistance and that sort of thing. So, and that's important to me and value, and that will be coming to an end. I'm at the age where I can retire. I haven't, because I still like my work and I still care about the people I'm working with, but the time will come. What I do, I really value the teaching I do with dance, and one of the things that I think is distinctive that I bring and that I put a lot of focus on is the humanizing touches that come to dance. So for tango's interesting in that the stages of engagement are ritualized. So, for example, you do the eye contact across the room, the cabeceo, and you approach and you hold out your hand and you take your hand and then you fold into this embrace. And so then I break that down and I say, what does it mean to look into another person's eyes? And I mean, I had somebody just recently who actually quite interestingly, most recently, I've had about half a dozen people come to my lessons who have just gone through grief experiences and they've lost a loved one. So they're coming to learn how to open up again. And so I say something like, when you approach your partner, look into their eyes and see them for who they are. And what does it mean to be, just looked at? And what are we saying with our gaze? And how do we want to be seen? And so those little, you call them little. I don't think they're little. They're huge. But I focus on that, and what does it mean to take somebody's hand? This isn't just a dance maneuver, and you don't just kind of run up to somebody, grab onto them, and kind of kick into high gear. I mean, you're entering a sacred space to allow yourself to open yourself up and step into somebody else's open space as well. With that vulnerability is a really sacred journey, and we need to treat it with the utmost intensity and integrity and gentleness. So that's how I think I help. That's some of the ways I work at helping people.
Sounds spiritual and meaningful to me. Thank you so much for your contribution to well-being in the world. What are 3 things about life you know for sure?
I love my kids. I know. You get me. Oh God, you got me on this one now.
Wow.
That was anyway. That's been kind of one of the rocks. That's what kind of started me on my journey, and I just, going back to the trauma piece, and you're saying you had to have kind of this knock on the side of the head experience to get your attention or to shake things loose, so that when my kids came along, woof, I said,
You're
I said
making
to
me
myself,
cry.
I,
Oh
I
boy.
said, I'm not going to let what happened to me happen to them.
Ah,
So, and I didn't even know what I was afraid of at the time or what I was thinking of. I just knew that something had to change, and I was in a situation. I was in a relationship where there wasn't any love. Well, I don't want to put it that starkly, but where it had, as I had described it earlier, I'd insulated myself from um, knowing what to do with my past, but also my present. In terms of feelings and whatever. And I just thought, I am actually, to be honest, Valerie, I said, uh, I picked up to myself. I never said it, but looking back, I realized that's what it was. I am not a safe person right now. I am not in a place where I can trust myself to act appropriately and act in a loving, caring, respectful, protective way for my kids. And the love hit me so strong that I just like the whole rest of my life had to just get dismantled and trashed right then. It's like I've got to start this over and build from the ground up. And I want to be. I don't want to repeat mistakes. I want to be the person um, that I need to be to care for these uh, beautiful gifts.
yes, they are.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that started the unraveling on some respects, but then it of course led to the rebuilding and the reweaving and the learning and the to where I'm kind of damn proud of how they've grown up and the part that I've had to play in that. So.
That's really great. I love the way you have integrated the darkness and the light to transform your life and
Mm,
become this new person
mm,
who is filled with love and awareness.
yeah.
So, the second thing you know for sure about life.
Okay. Oh. Oh. Well, I'm going. But geez, you know what? My learning for the last while has been body based. So, I mean, you've done this. You've been in your body for so long, and now, mind you, you've had to learn when was what was respectful and what was overdone and what was ignored or
Yeah.
neglected. So, um, but yeah, I've to the at the point where anything I do, any knowing or any engagement, I want to be able to feel it in my body. So that's, and I tie this in with my, I guess, Christian faith, which is um, that spirit and flesh are together, are one, and that's where God is. That's where
Right.
we experience whatever we're to experience about the divine. It's got to be in that meeting place, that joining place. So I work with that. What else do I know about life? I don't know, not a whole lot.
Oh, you said a lot today. So, where can we find more information about you, your work, your books, and projects, Aydan?
I'm going to say so. I'm going to say something. Just this little aside right now,
Yeah.
because you talk about what is humanizing and what is. So when you say the little thing like when you say my name, I love the way you say my name, and I love to hear that. And I'm just thinking that that's just a little example of how we affirm each other. Just how we just notice it, and that's again back to the dance and back to the whatever. But I mean, that's what I think this whole business is about people, is how we can just sit and listen and affirm and recognize and how can my book and my
Yeah.
everything. um, so I have the website I'm working with. The easiest one to remember is tangotouch.ca. But I haven't posted on there for a long time. I write a weekly blog. The one I'm posting on is called dancingwithpresence.com. And so that's where I've been posting the last, and that'll have whatever else has my email address and anything else you want from there. So Dancing with Presence is where I am typically.
Great. I'll have that information on my website too, on the podcast page. It has been I could use words like meaningful, spiritual, but it's just real. Has been a very real experience talking to you. I felt a lot of the things you said went into my heart. That's where we meet God. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for the work that you're doing too as well. I mean, what you've taken on. I mean, it's not just this interviewing thing, but I mean, what I've read about your journey in your book, and it's fabulous. Anyway, I mean, what are words, right? So, but it resonates. Yeah, it really resonates.
Thank you, Aydan. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Aydan, please visit his website, dancingwithpresence.com. To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, and Terry Clayton. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.